Hello, good morning everybody, or good afternoon whenever I post this. I wanted to talk about something that is really important, and that is respecting the minutia and the details and the nitpicky stuff that comes when your child is in school. All right, now I know there's a lot of stuff, right? You get 1,000 emails a day. This teacher has rules, this teacher has rules, that teacher has rules. The school has, there's policies, there's procedures, there's rules, there's grading policies, and it can be a lot, and I understand that. I really do. That being said, I'm going to suggest that we should assume that all these rules, policies, and procedures are important and that they have a point. Let me give you an example. A friend of mine teaches English, and this friend has a very strict policy on due dates and is unyielding with this. And over the years, I know this friend has had, if a student misses the deadline, there's a penalty, and actually beyond a certain deadline, this friend of mine will not accept work. Well, that enrages people. Well, why not? It was only a day late. Well, it's not there's all these reasons for it. Here's the reason, is because my friend has to record and post grades, and there's deadlines for that. And so in order for my friend to comply with the deadlines that the school's given for posting grades, it has to back things up and make sure she has sufficient time to do this. Now, also she teaches English, and that requires, grading, writing, and essays takes a long time, especially because you're not merely grading it, you're trying to help the student become better, a writer. And so, that takes an enormous amount of time and thought. This is not just marking a grade, it's like circling things and saying, hey, expand this, or this doesn't make sense, or this would be better in that paragraph, right? So this apparent nitpicky grade deadline that annoys people is actually there to allow my friend to do her job, to grade these assignments in a thoughtful way and give feedback to the students that will help them grow and comply with the school's deadlines for posting grades. Now, people don't understand that, all right? They just see, well, my kid missed the deadline and it's not fair that now they can't turn it in. It has nothing to do with fair. We really misuse fair a lot, okay? Fair means that you blatantly let someone else turn theirs in after the deadline, and then you don't allow the same thing for someone else. That would be unfair. It's not unfair, especially if you tell people at the beginning of the year what the policy is. And also, one word unfair is, there's always circumstances that people don't know. So, for example, and I said it wouldn't be fair, but let's say someone was in the hospital, or they had just had a death in the family, or something like that. In that case, it might actually be fair to give them a little bit of grace. But that only works. You can only give grace to a few people. If you try to give grace to everyone, things fall apart. So basically, if you want to have grace at some point, then you have to be restrained. All right? You have to not clamor for an exception unless it is just truly a unique situation, a real emergency, or some major crisis. All right, the fact that, someone was busy, or that they've had a lot of games this week, or there was other homework, or, whatever, that's not a reason. All right, so understand that. This is true for everything. I've also heard, I know people who have very strict bathroom policies. I knew one teacher who had really strict bathroom policies, and honestly, I thought they were too strict. I kind of feel like using the bathroom is just a pretty basic human right. However, this teacher taught math, and what would happen was, kids would go to the bathroom, take a long time, and they'd miss a significant part of instruction, and then they'd come back and they didn't know what was happening, and then she had to either stop teaching the group to catch them up, or she had to keep teaching the group and they didn't know what was going on. It just wasn't an ideal situation for learning math. And it was not a very long, it was only like a 43-minute class period. And there's, time before and after, and if if students use their time well, if they're not kind of just dawdling and chatting in the halls. So while it wasn't my preference, I could see there was a reason for it, and it was a reason that made sense. If someone is going to teach your child, and if someone's going to teach other children from whatever, 20 to 35, however many kids in their class, that teacher's accountable, and they need to decide the terms that will allow them to do good work. All right. Now, they might seem fussy about it, and it might seem petty, and they might focus on these tiny things. But if you dig down, there's usually a reason for it. But there won't always be time. The teacher can't be in the position of always having to explain everything. Like, well, here's why I do this. I know a lot of teachers who are becoming exhausted with having to just justify everything they do and explain the reason and the rationale for it. And I want you to imagine if at work you had 30 clients and you were responsible to give all of them the very best product you could, and in addition to that, just delivering to those clients, everything you did was questioned, and every time you tried to do something, you got a call from corporate or somewhere like that, asking you to justify what you did. It would be exhausting, and it is exhausting, and it really gets in the way of teaching. Now, I'm not saying that everything every teacher does is good or wise. Sometimes teachers are very human, obviously, and we all know there's really good teachers, there's not very good teachers, and then there's a lot of teachers in the middle. But frankly, that's kind of where a lot of humans are, right? Most of us don't live in excellence or total awfulness. We usually kind of go back and forth a little. At any rate, I think that teachers really deserve, and I say this as a parent, I have been frustrated many times, by the way, I will just admit it, with things that a teacher did when my child was in school. All right, I've really been annoyed. I totally get it, but I have tried to just remind myself, okay, you know what? I'm not in the classroom. I'm not teaching this subject. I'm not teaching this subject to this group of kids. I need to give them some latitude, and I need to assume that, presume good faith, that they're doing the best they can. Now, if over time it seems that that's not true, then, we can revise that opinion, and, we can start to address it in different ways, which is a whole different post I've talked a lot about in the past. But that's another thing I should have mentioned, is that, teaching third grade is not just teaching third grade. Every single group of third graders is vastly different. So if I'm teaching third grade, what worked last year may not work this year, and definitely what worked 10 years ago isn't working now. But if I teach 3 classes of third grade, everyone is going to be different. I actually do a lot of rotating. I teach lots of different grades on a rotating basis, and I am stunned by the difference between, same grade level but different makeup of kids. It's just a different dynamic. So teachers are constantly needing to figure out things that work with this group. They have to adapt, and they have to think on the fly, and some of their ideas are going to be brilliant and some are not going to be great. But you really have to trust that the teacher is a professional who's trying to do their best, and we presume good faith. Now, again, if that ends up not being the case, there's time and there's ways to attend to that. But start with that presumption. One of the things I've challenged my students to do, and I highly recommend to parents, I've told my students that I am always open to discussing a change in my policies, but that before I'm willing to have that discussion, they have to accurately tell me what my goal is, what's the why behind this policy. Why have I put this particular policy in place, or this practice? And if they can tell me correctly what I'm trying to accomplish, and then give me feedback that makes it better or changes it, I am so open to that, and there's been times when I've totally changed something, but I need them to start out with the understanding the why and understand what I'm trying to do, and then we can have that conversation. So I really would just encourage you to assume goodwill, assume good faith. The teacher's trying to do their best in a challenging job, and it really is challenging, and it's getting more challenging, to be honest. It is not the same as it was even 3 or 4 years ago. There's so many different things that society has changed in ways that make teaching harder and harder. So understand that the teacher's doing the best they can with a hard job. They have to do it in a way that makes sense to them, not to you. All right, and in order to be held, they're held accountable. Therefore, they deserve the benefit of the doubt in creating the structure of how to deliver on what their job is. It's very different from grade to grade, year to year. It's hard to overstate how different each class is from each different class, even the same grade level. It's just very, very different. So teachers have to adapt, and that means trying, and that means sometimes what they do won't be won't work out great, but you have to give them the benefit of the doubt. They can't stop to explain everything they're doing. I do think it's appropriate, if you really are wondering about something, to ask, can you help me understand this? I think that's a really good way to put it is, I have a question. I'm trying to understand this. Can you please help me? I know there's probably a rationale. Can you please help me? And starting with that question, as opposed to why do you do this? And coming in kind of hostile and skeptical, you're far more likely to get, you'll get farther along in the conversation, believe me, if you ask questions, than if you just make demands. I've had over the years people make demands or insist on something or tell me, you must do this or you must not do this. And I'm just going to say that just doesn't sit well. Very few, you might win a short term, maybe the teacher might give in, but they probably won't. All you're doing is creating a situation where they're probably going to have to dig their heels in a little bit, because that's what humans do. So start with questions. If you have questions, presume good faith. Don't just go to a skeptical, cynical place. Assume there's things you just don't understand. And this gets said a lot, but it's true. Until you've been in a classroom in front of a large group of kids, trying to get them to learn when, naturally they want to have fun and be social, right? That's where they are developmentally. They want to move and squirm. Until you've been in that classroom trying to teach content to them, trying to help them learn and grow, you really don't understand what it's like. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have an opinion, and it doesn't mean you can't have suggestions even, but it does mean you need to just start out with a little humility and assume that there's a lot you may not understand here. And that's why you ask questions. Asking questions is almost never going to be a bad thing, because you can always escalate, right? If you ask questions and you decide something really isn't fair or right, you can escalate. But if you escalate at the start, then it's very hard to ratchet it back down. And then you just created a situation where the teacher's back is up and they're going to be, watching very carefully. They're going to probably feel a little defensive and guarded, and it's not going to help get what you want. The other thing to remember is that we are so used to getting whatever we want in society now. Everything is instant. We get everything almost immediately. I mean, the other day I ordered something on Amazon and I was put out because it was going to take a week to get here. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. I was really annoyed at that. That's the world we live in. Schools are not like restaurants where you can just go and say, I want this and this and this, or I want this order, but I want it without fries, and could you please substitute a drink for a shake or something like that. That's just not how school works. Schools are not, schools should be responsive to parents to some degree, but they can't be fully responsive to every parent, because that would just be chaos, and you can't run a school like that. So also just understand clearly what the role of a parent is. you will not be able to just insist on everything you want. And if you try, you'll very quickly lose any influence you have. Influence will come as you cultivate relationships, as you're known for being respectful and engaged. There's people I've just seen over the years at every school I've ever worked in for almost 30 years now, or something like that, that there's always parents who all they have to do is ask a simple question and everyone will bend over backwards to help them. The reason that they are in this position is because they have proved over the years that they're supportive and they're helpful. They show up, they volunteer. Now I know schedules are tight, but I really think almost everyone can find time for something. But they send a little email of appreciation when a teacher makes effort. They send in donuts to the lounge. Like, what, they just show their engagement and their support. And they never ask for anything. It's not reasonable. And because of that, all they have to do is just lift a finger and everyone is like, yep, I want to help this person. I want to help this person. So cultivating goodwill is one of the most important things you can do if you want to have influence. I'm not talking about bribery. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying, people who are supportive of the school, who are known as being positive, who are allies and not adversaries, who are engaged, who understand what's happening, who see the efforts, who express appreciation, those are the people who just can get almost anything they want within reason. I mean, sometimes there's things, but the reality is often those people don't ask. They only ask for something when it's really important, and they have this enormous privilege, but they don't ever use it. So you too can become privileged. You don't have to be at school every day making copies. I mean, if there's ways to help and sign up, that's great. But just literally a little note to your teacher sending appreciation. Hey, I know last night for back to school night kept you at school late. Really appreciate your time. It was great to hear more about you and how you run class. I'm excited to get to know you better. 5 sentences, hit send, and boom. Just doing stuff like that. Acknowledging when you see extra effort, taking a moment to just say that you appreciate them. Little things like that go an awfully long way. So I hope that all makes sense, but I really think it's important to understand this. So much conflict that I hear about or see, but a lot of this is stuff I've seen firsthand, but a lot of it is also what I hear from other friends and colleagues in other schools, not just my own, and things I read in the the news and stuff. It just seems clear to me there's a lot of conflict, often regarding school stuff, and it's kind of unnecessary. But it also requires understanding clearly some basic things. If you understand how the system works, you have a much better chance of being able to help affect change. If you're just going to fight everything, you might win a few battles, but in the long run, you're not going to get very far, and you kind of will lose any influence you have. So I hope all that makes sense. I hope that's helpful. I probably need to do another post about managing conflict with schools, although I've written a lot about that. You should be able to search the archives and find lots about that. At any rate, this school parenting nexus can be tricky for sure, but it can also be such a satisfying and really significant and important, very positive relationship. But it takes a little effort, and it kind of requires you to understand that you're not the senior partner in this relationship. No matter who you are in your other life, the school is the senior partner, and so you're always going to catch a lot more flies with honey than with vinegar. You're going to get a lot farther with questions as opposed to insisting on something or demands, and you're going to get a lot more influence if you will cultivate genuine, respectful, warm relationships. All right, this will help your children so very much. All right, you've got this. Happy parenting. I'll talk to you later.